In the last video, amongst other things, I spent a borderline self-indulgent amount of time talking about a video game called Spec Ops: The Line. I detailed a number of ways that techniques, codes, and conventions were used to challenge audience expectation. By the end of my digression, I ended with this summation. However, Spec Ops turns on its own audience and offers a damning critique of the violent power fantasy media they enjoy for a leisure activity. That is the theme of the game. It's certainly not a particularly subtle one either. Nearly all the techniques, codes, and conventions have been employed to contribute to the construction of this overall theme. In Spec Ops: The Line, nearly all of the techniques, codes, and conventions have been employed to contribute to the construction of this overall theme. The music, loading screens, playable sequences, art direction, story, and dialogue build towards a pretty cacophonous thematic crescendo, where the person playing the game is, for lack of a better description, personally attacked for playing the game. It's important to note that theme doesn't just exist in works that are attempting to offer some kind of bold artistic statement. Going back to our first video and my preferred definition of art, art serves to renew each generation's perceptions of, well, everything. Theme is definitely essential in striving to do this, but having a theme doesn't mean you're trying to do this as a maker of creative work necessarily. Take the film Home Alone. Home Alone is an incredible example of the filmmaking craft. It has at least 3 different themes: the importance of family, taking responsibility, and forgiveness. But does Home Alone meet our definitional standard? Is it renewing our perceptions on anything? Well, not really. This doesn't mean that it isn't art, by the way, just that it doesn't meet my somewhat arbitrary benchmark for a media art film that would be helpful to you in this course. It certainly doesn't mean that it's not a good film, a fun film, or even an important film. It's all of those things. Its themes are strong, clear, and relevant to a lot of its audience. Home Alone primarily builds its themes in the ways any narrative work does, with story. Theme always gets built first from the things that happen in the story. The journey of the characters, the conflict within the narrative, the spaces and places the story takes place. If we look at Home Alone, the themes of the importance of family, taking responsibility, and forgiveness are all built first through the events of the story. So theme is in nearly every movie, book, game, TV, show, etc. Where does media aesthetics come in? Now, I said before that Home Alone is a masterful piece of filmmaking, and I stand by that. As a way to explain that and to explore this idea of media aesthetics, I want to engage in a good old-fashioned comparative analysis. Whenever we want to compare 2 works, we need to figure out a point of similarity. So let's go with the theme of the importance of family. It's certainly not an uncommon theme, but I wonder if we can identify another film that is thematically fixated on the importance of family. Maybe a film where a central character talks about the importance of family somewhere in the film, perhaps more than once.
There's all kinds of family.
Disrespecting my whole family.
And now you've found your family.
Then Han was family.
My family. Family.
Family.
Family.
Family.
Brief joke aside, this is not about to turn into an extended rant where I rag out the Fast and the Furious films and bang on about how amazing Home Alone is. I genuinely do want to compare these 2 films and look at the different ways they go about achieving their goals and how that difference can help us understand media aesthetics specifically. As mentioned, they both have the theme, the importance of family. These base themes are built first by the story. In Home Alone, we see this develop over the course of the film as we see the lengths that Kevin's mum goes to in order to get back to her son. And we also see Kevin, who at first relishes the absence of his annoying family members, but then comes to miss and then yearn for them. We see this through dialogue, and we see this through story. In the Fast and the Furious movies, we are regularly shown moments and scenes where it's clear that family is important, and as previously shown, explicitly told by Vin Diesel that family is very important. Heaps of times. But for the sake of exploring this dot point, how else is the theme of the importance of family built in the films? Sure, we can say it to the audience, but dialogue is just one code that we can use to influence and impact an audience. What other codes and conventions have been used to further the theme of the importance of family? This is basically what media aesthetics are. If all of the codes and conventions are pulling in the same direction, we might say that a work has a cohesive or a strong media aesthetic. Well, in Home Alone, one of several codes being employed to reinforce this theme is color. Now, I want to say straight up that I am not clever enough to have figured out this example on my own. It comes by way of one of my favourite film YouTubers, Patrick Willems. This use of colour in Home Alone comes from his Film Analysis 101 video, which is a very, very, very good video to watch if you want to get better at analysing movies, which all of you do, because that's what we do in this course. So in Home Alone, we start off in the McAllister house. Everything is super warm colour-wise. All the lighting is very yellow. It's a warm tone. The walls, the beds, the furniture, the clothes, the napkins. Its overall colour palette just oozes warmth and comfort and belonging. I mean, look at these walls. It looks like the interior designer for this house's only previous experience was as a gift wrapper at some upmarket rich person department store. Oh, and red. There is red in the McAllister house. A lot of red everywhere. Let's compare that now to the parts of the movie outside the home, especially the storyline about Kevin's mum, who spends the whole movie trying to get back to him. Well, at first, it's kind of the same. These shots are the ones from before she realizes that she's left Kevin behind. Still warm, still comfortable, still all good. But these are the shots after she's realized. Look at these two shots from inside the plane side by side. Look at the difference in the color between the side of the plane. These cool blues and whites and greens continue throughout this storyline, but not for Catherine O'Hara's character. She's always warm, red hair, camel coat. Even the people who end up helping her get the last leg of the journey home are in the warm tones of yellow as well. All of these color choices were deliberate and crucially reinforce the theme of the importance of family. Now, let's consider the Fast and the Furious. Everyone seems to agree that Fast 5 is where the franchise sort of fully settled into its groove as a series, so I sat down to rewatch it with an eye for anything that is being done to reinforce the theme of the importance of family. And not just color symbolism either, anything. And the answer is sort of? And that's a pretty generous sort of. I mean, at a massive stretch, you could probably talk about how the sound design shifts when Dom talks about the importance of family, or that the central team is often shown interacting with like kids in the favelas. But the film language, the use of pictures and sound, it's not really doing much to contribute to the theme of the importance of family. Certainly not in the way that Home Alone does. Home Alone has a stronger media aesthetic than Fast 5 does, at least when it comes to establishing theme. So why this difference? Well, to answer that, we'd need to delve into the issues of production, budget, the influence of major studios, the context that both films were made in, that sort of thing. We'll put a pin in that for unpacking in a later video, but I want to be clear that this doesn't mean that the Fast and the Furious franchise sucks or you suck if you like it. Heaps of movies get made that are good for kicking back, switching off, and having a good time. What I wanted to show you was that there was a kind of continuum here. We can put Fast 5 on the continuum down one end, where the different decisions aren't necessarily doing a lot of heavy lifting to reinforce the central themes. And down the other end, a movie like Home Alone, where a lot of deliberate intention is being put into how the different codes and conventions are employed to reinforce theme. But that continuum isn't actually very complete. Mostly because neither of these films actually represent the extreme ends of the continuum. For all that Fast 5 isn't going out of its way to bring codes and conventions together to reinforce theme, it's possible to have a film that is way less cohesive and way more all over the place than Fast 5. A film like Jurassic World Dominion is a good example of this. I know it made heaps of money and there will almost certainly be more of this film, but man, this movie was an absolute mess. The use of codes and conventions are not only not working together, but they're often working at like cross purposes. If you've ever been watching a big budget film that is just doing all of the right things at like face value, but just isn't working for you, it's probably because it belongs down this end of the continuum, the messy end. And on the other end, we can go way more cohesive in execution than Home Alone. This is where we would place the sorts of films that win awards at the Oscars and festivals and stuff like that. A film like The Piano would exist down this end of the continuum, where there is clearly deliberacy and intention to nearly every choice made by Jane Campion, the film's director. In the media art unit, this end of the continuum is where we spend most of our time in terms of analysis. Not because these films are good and the rest are bad, but because you can dig really deep into these sorts of movies and they give you a lot of material to unpack, look at, think about, and write about. This is particularly helpful if you're going to have to try and answer essay questions about media works. This is why a lot of your media teachers are going to pick one or two main texts from down this end of the spectrum, because hopefully no matter what sort of a question you get, there'll be enough material there to spin out into an extended response. In this video, I've tried to convey what media aesthetics are and how they can be used, especially in media art. The TLDR is this. Media producers can use codes and conventions to build themes and artistic statements and meanings in their works. When they do this in a way that is cohesive and permeates most aspects of the work, we can say that this creation has a strong media aesthetic. And in this course, the only thing we really care about in terms of what a media aesthetic does, at least as far as writing an essay is concerned, is make art. From here, you should now apply the theory concepts covered in this lecture to whatever your major analysis texts are in your course. What is the overall artistic statement or statements being made in the text? And list all the different ways that codes and conventions are being employed to build and reinforce that statement or statements. Good luck.